Andre Taylor. I want to say welcome to I Never Knew TV.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to get right into this reasoning. And the first question I have for you is, how has the victim mentality been a hindrance to the collective progress of black people in America?
It's a great question. It's a great question. The reason why it's such a great question is because I've had to experience the problematic issue of victimhood dealing with police accountability when my brother Shay Taylor was killed in 2016. I left Los Angeles, came to Seattle, started my organization called Not This Time. And now I'm dealing with a situation that's been going on in our communities for a long time. Now my brother has been killed, right? It's impacting me. What are you going to do about this, Andre? Right? Well, one of the first things that I realize is why we as a people have been losing this particular battle, right? How is it that we can see somebody that's actually shot on camera by a police officer and the person gets off, right? So what I realize is that when an incident of violence happens, there is a reaction from our community, and that reaction is a reaction of trauma. We'll go tear some things down, we'll burn some things, we'll have that type of reaction because of the trauma of what has happened in this country to us, right? Well, the reason why that's problematic is because in politics, everything is a narrative fight, right? So the reason why we've continued to lose all these years is we lose the narrative. So no one's focusing on the initial shooting that the police did. Now all the media is focused on how the community is acting up. And now everything is switched. All the narrative is focused on the reaction of the community, and you've lost the narrative. And we've continued to lose the narrative over and over again, right? So me understanding that, when I came to Seattle, I sat down with the chief of police, Kathleen O'Toole, and I told her something on purpose. I said, I know that I can't bring my little brother back, but I'm still willing to work with you to deal with the incidences of violence in the community. Now, the reason I did this is because I know she was expecting a reaction from me. So I said, I can't give her a reaction, I must give her a response, because a response makes her accountable to me. A reaction is something that law enforcement is used to. They're masters at knowing, oh, the people, they're gonna act up for 2 or 3 weeks and it'll go back to normal, right? So there's no power in a reaction. There's no power in the reaction of your trauma, because this country is an empire. This America operates like every empire that has ever existed before. They have conquered lands and people. So when our people with that trauma and that victimhood go and they say, why you keep doing this to us, right? They're not realizing that they got into the position that they're in by doing it to you, and by doing it to others. Right? So you're thinking that you're supposed to get some type of sympathy when they're an empire that conquer lands and people. There's no sympathy as a conqueror, right? So that's where things get kind of convoluted. We don't know how to operate in this system dealing with a conqueror, but I did. I viewed him as a conqueror, and I realized that conquerors respect power. And there's a certain thing that is said in campaigning and building a campaign that's not something familiar in the black community, and it's called building power. It's called building power, right? What do you mean by building power? Okay, well, since this empire doesn't respond to your trauma, they respond to power. Now I've got to build power. So what did I do? I went to every community. I went to the Latino community. I went to the Asian Pacific Islander community. I went to the white community. I went to the Samoan community. I went to the Native community, to their leadership, and I told them individually, we have been getting whooped. No progress. Join me in this effort because they can't beat everybody. And then I did something very significant. I took all these families of these different races that had experienced exactly what our family had experienced. And I put their voices at the forefront. So white people were talking about the same thing I was talking about. Latinos and natives and Asian Pacific Islanders were talking about the same thing I was talking about. And what I wanted to communicate is that this was not a black problem. This was an American problem. So now what happened? White people weren't coming to fight for us. Natives weren't coming to fight for us. Latinos and Asians weren't coming to fight for us. They were coming to fight for them because I needed to show them this is happening to you too. And that was the key. And that's how I won. That's called building power. So now when I came before law enforcement, I wasn't asking them to do anything for me, right? I was telling them what we wanted to get done. That's power. That's what they respected, right? And that's what our people need to understand. Because if you are constantly acting out of your victimhood, you're right where you're supposed to be. That's how an empire operates.
What is it about the system we live in that grooms many people to be experts at failing?
Okay, to be experts at failing. So let me explain this to you. You know, I teach classes. I do classes 4 times a week. I go around the country and I also give conferences. One of the first things that I teach is that most African Americans in this country are not operating with their original train of thought, their original mind. You're operating with a mind that has been given to you, right? And so a lot of people are shocked when I initially say it. And I say, well think about it this way. Transatlantic slave trade, 1619, the first enslaved people that came to this country. But before they came to this country, there were many of our people, they say millions of our people decided to jump off the ship. But you have to understand that our people had their own way of thinking about family. And I'm going somewhere with this. They had their own way of thinking about their relationships and their children and their wives, right? And the value that they had of how they felt about those things were so important to them, they couldn't see themselves subjugated to be anything other than what they valued. So they jumped off the ship because it was worth that to them. Right? So the ones that came here, I often say to the people that I'm teaching, I say, I could imagine for the first 10, 15 years that it was probably a very violent situation dealing with people that had their original way of thinking about who they were. But after 50 years of our people being born in a condition that, you are born into a condition. You have no point of reference to that original mind. And not only that, you're born into a condition that you're less than, and that if you try to run from this chattel slavery, you're a criminal. Right? You're a criminal. So you have a lot of people really felt if we run, we're criminals. So the reason why I'm saying that is because I had a friend, and this is all a part of your question. I have a friend named Johnny, and I did federal time with Johnny. And I remember Johnny getting out and me having a conversation with Johnny. And Johnny made a statement to me, and he says, "Oh, Dre, man, I ain't nothing but, I'm old convict." And I rehearsed to him what I just rehearsed to you guys. And I said, "Johnny, what you are is docile, right?" I said, "Do you know what docile is?" I said, a lot of our people that are, killing each other and have elevated the bag and all the things that this country have told you was valuable, all the things this country have told you to hate, to love, right? You've learned that from somebody else. It is not how you originally think. So when you say to me, "I ain't nothing but an old convict," what you're doing is you're throwing away all the history. You are the slave that's saying, if I run away from slavery, I'm a criminal. You are the slave that says, I'm a criminal. You are not a criminal, and you're not just an old convict. You have to bring into the equation all the things that have happened to you, right? And the mind that you're operating in has made you docile to just get along, to just accept whatever is going on. So when you say failure, you have to preference that, right? Because there is a failure that the country can tell you what failure is. There is also a success that the country can tell you what success is. But there are places around the world that may not elevate, that do not elevate the American dream. Because the American dream is supposed to do what? It's supposed to make you happy. So if you buy that idea of the American dream and you don't have it, guess what? What's the opposite of making you happy? It makes you sad, and it makes you a consumer. So with that indoctrinated mind, right, you are now operating because you believe that concept of what happiness is, which is the American dream. So I teach in a class, you have to give them back their mind. You have to give them back everything that they have told you to value, everything that they have told you to hate. You have to give them back that, but you can't give it back until you have found something else that's more valuable. And that's what I teach, the more valuable. So when you say failure, a failure to me might not be the same failure to them and vice versa. A failure to them might not be a failure to me, right? Somebody might say that your dad was a pimp and your mother was a prostitute, and you're not going to ever be anything ever in life. If I accepted that, fact, it would become a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's a book I read called Siddhartha by an author named Herman Hesse. And the character when I go to universities and I go lecture at universities, I remember one time discussing this, and I was like, there was a character, Siddhartha, in the book, and he had a best friend named Govinda. And his father, Siddhartha's father, is a priest, and he wants Siddhartha to be a priest like him, and Siddhartha rejects it. I don't want to be it. So there's disagreement until the father relents and allows Siddhartha and his best friend Govinda to go out for a self-discovery. So when they go out for a self-discovery, they find the Buddha, who's called the illustrious one. But guess what? Govinda goes and joins the Buddha. And I'm telling the college students this, but Siddhartha doesn't. So they break up, and from time to time, Govinda comes back and sees his friend. But one day, Siddhartha is walking down the street, and guess who's coming towards him? The illustrious one, the Buddha, right? And he knows about Siddhartha from Govinda. So when they meet up to each other, the Buddha asks Siddhartha, Siddhartha, why have you chosen not to join me? Have you found a better way? Siddhartha says, no, illustrious one, I have not found a greater way. But he says something, and I'm telling the students. He says, but it is impossible for you to communicate or teach me what you have learned in the hour of your enlightenment. He forces a smile and he walks away. So I tell the student, you have had the advantage of a structure and a system that has benefited you. I haven't. Even though you might think coming from a prostitute and a pimp is a failure, right? It has become an advantage to me because it is forced to me outside of the norm. And when I was forced outside of the norm, I intermingled into new knowledge and new information. And that new knowledge and that new information that I was forced to go find has me here teaching you and your professor.
The process of unlearning failure.
Mm-hmm. You have to have new information. You can only have new information. I often say this in classes is that people are predisposed to go back to a behavior that they're comfortable with, right? And if there's no new information being placed inside of you, there's nothing that you can pull out of you to face the old habit. It's just not going to disappear on its own. You have to develop, there has to be new information that you're drawing from. That's how you deal with the old habit, the old man, right? And that indoctrination. The new information is what gives you the power over it, right? So you just can't go and just think that I'm going to do this, that, and the other. No, because a person is predisposed to go back to a behavior that they're comfortable with every single time. This is why in my classes, it's necessary for people to be consistent because the system 24/7 is promoting their ideas, their philosophies constantly 24/7. They're promoting to you their ideas. And if you don't have anything to counteract that, they will win. You will be subjected, right? And you will do everything that the system has been set up and designed for you to do.
And you brought up a great point in your personal life, right? When you were making that transition, what was that thing? What was that new information that held you so you didn't fall back on old habits?
Okay, so it wasn't a new information. There's a scripture that I like, and this is not religious. There's a spiritual principle within what is said: train a child up in the way he shall go, and when he's old, he shall not depart from it. In American Pimp, that I did with the Hughes brothers, and what was that with? I think it came out in 1999. It went to the Sundance Film Festival. They filmed the portion of American Pimp when I was in prison and I had caught the case, right? And I said something that resonated with people. I said, before you are anything, my father told me that you have to be a man. Before you're a doctor, before you're a lawyer, before you're a pimp, right? I said, you have to be a man first. And to this day, that very thing resonates with people because they seen me facing a life sentence. They seen me going through adversity, but they also understand there was a fundamental that was inside of me, right, that resonated with me throughout all my life. So it was the thing to raise a child up in the way he shall go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. It was those things that my father had placed inside of me as a young man that allowed me to transition through my life. It didn't prevent me from going through circumstances and situations, but it was a catalyst of change that existed in me already, if you can understand what I'm saying.
What can parents do, specifically fathers, to help their daughters feel confident and have a high level of self-worth and self-love?
That's a good question. But that's the secondary question. The primary, you just said, what can fathers do? What I would do, I would challenge first, before you can get to that secondary, to do this for my child, for my daughter. I need to first make sure that the quote unquote father is said father. And that just because he holds the title of father does not mean that he has the information to distribute to a child of what to do, right? In other words, you can't transmit what you don't have, right? So there's a lot of men that might be fathers, but they might not be informed how to maneuver because they might not have had a father to pass down information to them about how to empower your child or your daughter and to give them certain things. You might have trauma as a father passed down, and you might be passing down that trauma to your child, right? So we got to first get to fatherhood, right? And what that looks like. You see what I'm saying? Before you can even get to this empowering your child, right? But me as a father, right? I have a son that graduated Yale. I have a daughter who graduated UCLA. I have a daughter who is married, and she was married to a military man. So me as a father, I would often say I have to continue, because of my background, to produce extraordinary things, to not give my children an excuse to fall back on my mistakes. See, so it encourages me to continue to do extraordinary things, because then I can continue to hold them accountable. But if
Set the example.
yeah, if all I had was I used to be a pimp, it's going to be hard to influence my child, right? It's going to be hard. So that's not all I have, right? As a matter of fact, that's only a short portion of my life. Now I have that I'm the only man that have changed laws and lead the country in police accountability. And I did that through my genius, right? I've been interviewed by The New Yorker. I've been on Fox News several times. I've had the President of the United States call me for the work that I've done. So I have to continue to do extraordinary things to empower my child. So you see, it's a process. If I'm going to say this, that, and the other, let me have the receipts to make sure it has footprints. What that means is that it's heavy, right? Make sure that what I'm saying to my child has footprints. So that's how I would empower. I gotta have receipts.
I wanted to talk about self-forgiveness, but first, we live in a weird society. We always talk about forgiveness, but people don't really like forgive people and allow them to move on from their past.
Well, let me just say this, because we talked about this in the beginning about trauma and about why that holds us back as a people. Well, one of the things that I realized is that how we reflect that trauma upon one another, we're very unforgiving of each other, right?
Facts.
Our people are more willing to forgive quote unquote white people, even though there's a history of what they've done, than us. Yeah, they forgive somebody white, right? But us, oh, forever. When I came back to Seattle to fight for my little brother, I got no support from Seattle. That people didn't support me because they was like, oh, he used to be a pimp, right? So I didn't get no support. So the motto of my organization was do the work, because I realized that, listen, I'm not about to get no support. I'm gonna do this work and let the receipts speak for itself. Because automatically off top, I wasn't gonna get no support. And it took a very, very long time before I started getting some support from, the black people up here, church folks or whatever it was, right? And that's because of their trauma, right? And that self-hate.
And you brought up a great point, and I think that's why a lot of brothers and sisters struggle with moving on, because the environment doesn't allow you to move on. You may be in a position where you want to move on, but if you're in an environment that doesn't allow you to move on from your past, I think that's what stunts a lot of people,
Yeah. That's where we can go back to fatherhood and why that's so important, because I had a father that had implanted some things inside of me that no amount of rejection from my own community could have stopped my upward mobility, right? And that was the seeds that he had planted in me as a young son, as a young child, to be able to have that father in my life that cemented something in me. My father said something to me when I was in prison. He said, one thing I know about you, son, is that wherever success is, you will be. Let me tell you this. This is how, just a genius. My father is not here anymore. He's made his transition in 2007, but he was the greatest and smartest man I ever known. But one day my father said to me, he said, son, I have two things that I expect from you, right? I said, okay, Dad, shoot. He says, the first thing is, with all the disadvantages as a black man in this country, he said, in the race that you have to run, I expect for you to finish the race. And I was excited. I was like, oh, Dad, you ain't got nothing to worry about. I'm going to finish the race. You don't got to worry about that. I'm going to make sure I do that. He said, I had two things I expect for you, son. I said, okay, Dad. He said, the second one is, I expect for you to finish first. The genius of my father is that he knew in order for me to, quote unquote, finish first, that I would have to pull the genius out of myself, right? He didn't say to me, because I was in the streets, son, your mother was in the streets, and things might be a little difficult. The community is going to judge you. People going to not like you. He didn't say any of that. It was his expectation of me that made me rise to the level of his expectation.
How hard was it for you growing up with a father who was a pimp in the house and socially? Because I'm pretty sure that had to be, continue.
Yeah, well, it was earlier that my father was in the lifestyle when I was a younger fella, but later on he wasn't. As a matter of fact, my father wrote the all-American novel called The Midman that got 4 out of 5 stars on the New York Times, right? He became a published writer. So, and that helped me with my transition, seeing where my father was able to do. He started teaching at universities and all these things as well. So at the earlier part of my life, growing up, it was something, I alluded to this in American Pimp, and I was like, as a young boy, seeing all these beautiful women coming out the house, it was an exciting thing in the beginning, right? It was like, oh my God, my dad is a ladies' man. This is incredible, right? So, that part was exciting. But while I was going through that as a young boy, it was the things my father was teaching me while I was going through everything, right? Like manhood. And one time my father gave me $100, right? I was going to Seattle. He gave me $100. And then he gave me $100 to give my little brother when I get to Seattle. So I spent my $100 before I got to Seattle, right? And so while I was at the airport, I spent $10 of my brother's money, but I was going to pay him back, right? So I'm going to pay my brother back. I wanted to get something. So when I got to Seattle and, gave my brother his money, and I got a phone call a couple hours later, and the first thing I heard on the line was my father said, "You are a thief and a robber." Yeah. And I was like, "What? You are a thief and a robber?" I said, "Dad, what are you talking about? You have stolen from your brother." I said, "I didn't steal from my brother. How much money I give you? 100? How much I give to give your brother? 100? How much you give him? 90? Oh, I was going to pay him back." It's the principle, son. That's when I start really learning about it's the principle, son. Yeah. You should have asked him, no matter what you might have wanted, it wasn't yours to take. It's the principle, son. And boy, all my life, it's the principle, it's the principle, it's the principle. So I grew up in an environment that the elevation of manhood and principle was elevated above anything. You got to be a man, and anytime you would do something that was less than manly, my father would say, "That ain't no man stuff you doing over there, son." That was like the worst thing. That was like getting shot or killed or cut. If my father said that something, my behavior wasn't manly, this was the worst thing in the world. And so I grew up, even in the lifestyle, always personifying this idea of manhood, right? Somebody asked me one time, this is recent, a couple of weeks ago, I put a post out or something, and they knew my background, and they said to me in the comment, "Can a pimp be a man?" And so I wrote them back. I said, the question that you're asking is really light, right? It's a light question. I said, I'm gonna show you how. So I wrote them back and I said, can a gangster be a man? Can a doctor be a man? Can a hustler be a man? Can a lawyer be a man? Can this be a man, right? So when he wrote me back, he says, "I understand what you're saying," because it was stupid that I asked that, right? Because what you're saying is that it takes a certain profession in order for an individual to be a man, right? And that's foolishness. You could be a man. I don't know if you ever heard of the story where the FBI was talking to Carlos Gambino, who was probably one of the most notorious godfathers, one of the most popular for sure. And they were having a discussion about not having any violence towards anyone's family members, all right? Whatever's going to happen, let that be between individuals that are involved, in the lifestyle or what have you. And let's not touch anyone's family, right? It was a matter of principle. And so they decided that we would never do that on principle. These are two opposing entities, but the man in both of those sides decided that this is what we were not going to do. This is off the table. That's manly, because that was a decision made on principle. Had nothing to do with him being a gangster. Had nothing to do with them guys being an FBI agent. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, I do hear what the person's saying, though, right, in regards to the question, because one can argue that, yes, there's principle during certain actions, but the actions would make a person question the manliness within that space.
Well, what would be the action? Let me ask you that question. What would be an action of said individual? Because before I ask you the question, I want you to understand there is a provocative vision of what might appear to be said, unsaid pimp versus what one really is, right? So a person on the outside might have a perspective of what they think that is, and then base a philosophy or an idea upon something that's falsity. There's somebody that somebody might think is a pimp, and me having really been one would say that guy is definitely not a pimp.
But even put pimp to the side because we brought up so much occupations, right?
Right.
Lawyer, doctor, athlete, whatever.
All right.
You can have principles, right? But it's not a universal action. Your totality is not a principled person. You have principles in different aspects of your life. And you may have aspects of your life where you're not fully having principles of a man. That's all I'm saying.
I disagree.
It's like it's a compartmentalized in a sense.
I disagree. I'm principled all the way through and through, and it's not good enough for me to say I'm principled through and through without having something that has highly challenged the idea of what I'm telling you. See, if somebody that's a doctor could say that they are a man in principle, but they haven't faced something that the possibility of their life being taken for that to be
that adversity.
You see what I'm
that
saying?
Adversity.
See,
I see
I
that's the
have
common
faced the
denominator you're saying.
adversity. I have the
Well, you stand
receipt.
on business. I got you.
Do you understand what I'm saying? When I was facing life in prison, I didn't tell nobody, right? I stood the test.
The circumstance exposes in a sense. I see what you're saying.
Do you understand? Yeah. So
But for you though, right? And I wouldn't say you're a great example of other people because you seem to have a discipline and principle that most people don't have. So my argument wasn't towards you per se. It was collectively towards men when I say compartmentalize principles. But I see what you're saying though, in regards to that because people have principles because they haven't faced a certain level of adversity. And once they face a certain level of adversity, most people would be exposed.
it's just what I'm saying. So I've, in my life, having faced, when I was doing police accountability, I was on dialysis, fighting for my own life. I didn't let anybody know. I was going to the dialysis center 3 times a week, fighting for my life while I was out there fighting for the community, and no one knew, right? And I wasn't going to allow anybody to know. Because what I had to do for the community, to me, was more important than what I was suffering in my own personal life.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, thank God I'm not on dialysis anymore. Thank God I got a transplant about 2 years ago, and everything is great. But at the time, at my worst case, I always tell people, at my weakest point, my physically weakest point, fighting for my life, I did the greatest work that I've ever done in my life.
When did you get to a point of forgiving yourself for any past actions that you had an issue with?
I don't think like that. I don't think like I forgive myself for past action. Let me say it like this, okay? And because a lot of times, you have to have the point of reference in order for a person to understand the statement that I'm going to make, right?
All right.
So let's just talk about it like this, right? I'm an Israelite, right? People say Hebrew Israelite, not so much like some of the people that's prominently shown on the street, arguing with people, not that, right? But nevertheless, I'm an Israelite. I believe that I come from the bloodline of Abraham. I believe that. I believe that the scriptures point to that, right? So what I teach is that if that's true, if the Most High says in Deuteronomy 28 that they would be taken by ships into slavery, and there's no people that have been taken by ships into slavery but our people, right? And if God told Abraham in Genesis 15:13 that your descendants will go into a foreign land that's not their own and be enslaved there for 400 years. I often say this, and this is going to be provocative, but I'm going to say it, right? I often say, if that's the case, I would have preferred God told Abraham, because he said that your descendants will be taken into a foreign country and be enslaved there. I said, I would have preferred if God would have told Abraham that they would be taken into a foreign country and be pimps and hoes there. I would have preferred that. Pimps, hoes, and hustlers. I said because if you grade trauma from 1 to 10, there's no trauma greater than slavery. Someone being able to do anything they want to do to you. Rape your babies, rape your women, rape your men, destroy you, do anything they want to do. So I said on a level of 1 to 10, slavery is the worst throughout the world. There is nothing to be compared to being in the condition of chattel slavery, right? So I would have preferred God said that they was going to be pimps and hoes there because that's not worse than slavery, right? And so I said, this is what I say. If God said that they would be enslaved there, then guess what? He knew the condition that the people would be in. And he wasn't shocked about the condition that the people would be in because thousands of years ago, he told Abraham, your descendants will be taken into this place and be enslaved. So God was aware of the condition and it wasn't going to be pretty. So whatever the solution is, right, it would have to match the depth of the condition. So when I talk to young black men, when I have, or women, conferences, I tell them, I want you to know you are not at your worst. If you was a prostitute, if you was a hustler, if you was a pimp, if you was a dope dealer, that's not your worst. That's not the worst. The worst is slavery. You're not at your worst, right? And the Most High knew your condition. And here's the resolution, the information that I'm going to share with you is your resolution. Because God has to send the resolution, and the resolution has to go down deeper than whatever the trauma is. If God is any God, right? This is why I have people that the modern church has not been able to reach. They have lost generations of our people. Men are not going to churches. There's a lot of women there, but it's not attracting men. The hip hop community is the church. They all have more influence than that. So why am I attracting men? Why do men come and see me? Because I don't care where they're at. I don't care what condition that they are in, right? It doesn't even move me because I know the condition I was brought up out of, right? So where the church might see dark, guess what, brother? I see light and I see opportunity because of where I came from.
We had Judge Joe Brown over here, right? And he told me about the strategic move after the civil rights movement to influence psyches of black people through black exploitation movies, right? That highlighted pimps and criminals. Do you believe that's why pimp culture was pushed so hard in the early 2000s in music? It seems like an era there if I where it was just a
No, the
vibe.
pimp culture started being pushed after we did American Pimp. It was pushed way before then. The most famous movie was The Mac. That came out in the 70s. Right? You got Superfly. You have all these films that came out that's talking about. Let me tell you. Let me. Judge Joe Brown. I love him. I brought him over to Conversations with the Streets, as well as a lot of black influencers and leaders in the country, Rizza Islam and Nuri Muhammad and just a lot of people. To what I was doing over here in Washington. But anyway. So, let me just say this to you, man. You know, again, because this is another way of trying to, make people from the streets the bad guy and the bad people, right? I'm from the streets. I have an affinity for people that come from where I come from. I understand, right? They're easy targets. I get it. I understand they're very easy targets just to blame it all on, right? And I'm very, very happy that the Most High has made me the way that I am, to be a defender of people that come from nothing. I love it because the Bible speaks about me. The Bible says that I've called the things that are low, the things that are despised, the things that are weak to conquer the things that are strong. The scripture says that. He's talking about me.
Andre, hold on. I'm not sure if I posed the question properly.
Okay.
I was talking more about the industry promoting it, not people and not pimps, but the industry itself, the music industry, not the artists, the actual music industry
The
trying to pump that
industry
message?
promote, that's nothing. What's
No.
promoted way bigger than that is violence. It's gang culture. That what we're talking about, some pimps and all this that's nothing. Right? Because that was never in no violence. That was just about being cool. That's why people in their music, when they want to allude to the fact that they're being cool and that they're a ladies' man, they might say, I'm a pimp. That had nothing to do with violence. That had nothing to do with killing your brother. It had something to do with being a ladies' man, a playboy. Right? No. What did it is the elevation of gang culture. The elevation of killing, murder being celebrated. I want that other little stuff can't hold a candle to what's going on in music and the hip hop culture and the direction that the system has placed everything to connect with the industrial prison complex and the music and all that. That's the real issue that's going on if you want to talk about some issues in the community. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
But some pimp stuff? Man, come on, that's laughable. It's laughable.
I once heard you say something that what I believe is an accurate assessment of this generation when you said, I'm paraphrasing, right? You said this generation is not afraid of dying, they're afraid of living. There's another brother that says something in that vein. He referred to it as like a slow suicide, right? Why do you believe this is the psyche of this generation, and what can be done to change it?
Well, I believe this is psyche because, of course, the family's broken up and young men are being raised by their mothers. There's a study that came out. People have been talking about it. Even Oprah talked about it, that a child will do just as good living with a father that he will do living with his mother and father. But if he's living with his mother, these monsters can be created. And I don't want to say that I'm trying to blame women because they're doing all they can do. And I believe that men have, lost their responsibility of being in the house. And why should they? Because they don't even value the idea of what a man is, because they've never been taught what a man is. They've never seen it in their homes and in their lives, to even value manhood, which makes it easier to kill somebody that represents or disrespect somebody that represents said man, right? They haven't seen it in their house. They haven't seen why they should value it. So, when you talk about, how it could be fixed, well, in my classes, I call them the remnant. The remnant. That means a small portion out of the many. How it can be fixed is I'm not trying to reach everybody, because I know everybody is not going to be reached. And everything boils down to value. Value. Everything boils down to value. And so when I am teaching, how do I get people? Because I let them know that it's not about you. This is not Christians where I'm out there trying to twist your arm to make you be a part of what I'm doing, or to tell you if you don't be a part of what I'm doing, you're going to hell. I never would ever think that God would be associated with anything like that, because it devalues who God is and the idea of God and the idea of Scripture, that I have to threaten you to be a part of what I'm doing. No, everything is value. If you don't have an idea of value, you will not change. It's something that you have to value. So when I present my information, I present it first that this is not for everybody. I want to let you know right from the beginning, I'm not here for everybody. I'm only here for the remnant. And that is the beginning stage of value. That at least allows somebody to be like, well, what is he talking about? Yeah, I'm talking about I'm not here for you. I'm only here for the remnant, right? And now that begins a different conversation of why I need to come, because you got to come in with value. If you don't come in with the value, I don't have the ability to help you change. You have to value something that I'm giving in order for me to influence you to change. I have to be relatable before I can be influencing. You see what I'm saying? And the way that I'm relatable is value. What I'm talking about is value. I'm not here for all of you. When I give a conference, it's not for everybody. We're not looking for everybody to come. As a matter of fact, we'll encourage you to take yourself down the road to one of them churches where you can be in there and there's no accountability over there or something. It's better that you go over there or go to the mosque or go wherever you want to go. But over here in this remnant, it's value-based. It's something that's expected of you. And what I've learned from a young man, from my father, is his expectation of me is what made me rise to be the man that I am. No one expects nothing from young black men today. No one. Society doesn't. No one, right? And it starts with an expectation because expectation produces value. Somebody expects something from you is because there's some value they see in you. And there's no expectation in the country for young black males.
No, you said the truest thing, man. I taught for years, right? And you'll be shocked how that expectation just changes the behavior of the student, both in their behavior and their academic performance, you know? But it's the expectation, and you brought up a great point in regards to, it's very true and it's very sad. Very few brothers are in an environment where there's an expectation for them, you know?
That's right.
Or to be held to a certain level of accountability. Next question I have for you, though, within that space, because you worked with a lot of brothers, do you feel a man can learn to be accountable during manhood if he never learned that earlier on?
Oh, yeah. It's easy. Oh, yeah, that's easy. Got it. It'd be easy. Well, the reason why it's like when I say my father taught me that you have to be a man before you anything, it resonates with mostly males that might not have even understood what that means, but they see it being represented while I'm facing a life sentence, right? And they're like, if this has to have some great meaning to it, if in this condition this man is talking about manhood, what is it about this manhood? And everything that I do, I associate with manhood, and you can see males wanting that. Don't no black young man not want to be a man. The worst thing that could have ever been done to our people, the worst thing, is for you to tell a young male that he's a man simply because he turns 18 years old.
Facts.
He has nothing that he has to do. There is no expectation of him. Even in old times in history, you had to go kill the lion or the wolf, or you had to go do something to prove your mettle.
Rites of passage vibe, yeah, like a rites of passage vibe. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And when they strip that away, oh my God, then the identity of what a man is was lost, right? So I bring it back. Man, you can't have these behaviors and think that you're a man because of this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Yeah. So this has to be an explanation. You can't just say you ain't a man. No. You got to have some footprints. It has to have some depth. You have to explain why this impacts him personally, why he loses. One thing I could say, listen, I was mentoring this person one time, and they're a philanderer. For those who don't know, a philanderer is a man that messes around with different women. He was married. He had 3 kids and a wife. And he wanted to stop being a philanderer, and he came to me. No. Well, one day, I guess he had messed up, and he came to me, and he says, man, I don't know why I keep doing this. I said, don't ever say that again to me. And he looked like huh? I said, don't ever say that again to me. And he thought I was tripping. I said, as a matter of fact, I want you to do something. He said, okay. I said, I want you to say, I did it because I wanted to do it.
And so keep it a buck.
So he says, I did it because I wanted to do it. I said, say it louder. I did it because, I said, say it louder. He says, I did it because I wanted to do it. I said, do you feel the man in you? I said, I'm not talking about right and wrong right now. I'm not talking about that. I can't even get to that part. I got to get to the man first. Do you feel the man in you? I did it because I wanted to do it. That's accountability. And when you get to accountability, you have the ability to change your condition. But if you're at, I don't know why I keep doing this, you could be there for 1,000,000 years. There's no accountability there. None.
That's real talk, man.
Right? So when you get to the accountability, you got the power to change your condition. Then you can go to the next phase. What's the next phase? Do I want to be this kind of person? I couldn't get there to you in the beginning. You didn't have the power to do anything about it. Because all you was as, I don't know why I keep doing this. I did it because I wanted to do it. That's manhood. See, and when you see just that little part right there, how many times this little thing there that I express to you is expressed within our homes, in our community? None. Like I said earlier to you, when you said, what can a father do for the power of his daughter? I said, that's not the question. That's the secondary. The primary is, does he got the information? What did he know? Right? We got to deal with him before he can pass down. He might be passing down trauma. So when you start explaining these things about manhood and what empowers you, and when you're acting outside of manhood, how that reduces you in every area of your life, it becomes attractive to a young black male. And that's why they come. Because they want to be empowered. And empowerment has nothing to do with the kind of money you have. Manhood ain't got nothing to do with no money. It had absolutely, there's a whole bunch of rich boys in the country. That's messing it up.
No, facts. No, serious thing, you know. And you know what's wild? The explanation you gave at manhood, that's such a stepping stone for you doing so much stuff. Because first, once you acknowledge what you're doing and say you're either doing BS or you're doing this, then now you can see how that impacts what you want to do in regards to your goals and that type of vibe, you know? So that's like a humongous stepping stone you have to get past basic accountability, which is missing in our society. It is what it is. But once you get there, you can move on to other stuff to really tap in and get stuff done with your life, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm in 100 agreement with you.
I want to hear what you say. Do you think women are more competitive than men?
Okay, so
I want to hear what you say on this one.
What can I take you with this? Because I want you to understand that you're dealing with an individual, right? That understands the value of manhood so much that I don't blame a woman. I'm gonna answer the question, but Kevin Samuels was a very popular figure, but I went at Kevin Samuels, right? There were some things, he said some things that were true, but there were some things that were problematic because he was appealing to the less and the weakness in males. How do I know that? Because his premise was to blame the woman for something. And when I got at him, I was explaining to him, there is no race of people upon the face of the earth that blame their women for anything but black males. And that's a shame. There is no race of men that blame their women. What you are doing, you are saying to the world that you have not developed enough as a man to accommodate whatever her issue is. It's a shame for us to be promoting the idea that it's the woman's fault. My dad, in his book, The Myth Man, there's a line, a character named Messiah is dealing with her man, Jimmy Lamar, and they having an argument. I always remember this line. And Messiah says, I'm not going to reduce my womanhood, right, to accommodate your lack of man. Ooh, I love that. I'm not going to reduce my womanhood to accommodate your lack of man. And so what's going on in our society right here with particularly black people is the lack of man. And you would see, even in this interview, when you show this, there's going to be a whole bunch of males that be mad at what I'm saying, right? Yeah. And I already know who you are, but I'm only here for the remnant, right? But for me, when you say, do you think a woman is more competitive, it's not even something that goes across my mind. Yeah. It's nothing that I don't even register.
Not in a relational, not even in a relational
in any way
context.
There is no way in the world that I'm even registering whether she's competitive, whether she is whatever, because I am so consumed within the idea of the value of the man that I'm going to accommodate whatever way she goes, if it's left, if it's right, if it's crisscross or whatever. I was having a conversation with a friend, and a guy was, somebody being in a relationship with a guy that, is not monogamous, right?
Yeah.
She was questioning him about something, and he was offended. Well, and then he starts saying, man, I got so much responsibility going on. My family don't want nothing. My family this, my this, that, and the other. And he became the victim. So what I expressed to my friend is that this is an individual that doesn't understand that accountability comes with that role. If you are a person that has a corporation, what goes along with the role is accountability. You can't cry about what goes along with you being an individual, right, that is trying to govern over several women. Accountability goes with that. I have a nephew that was in the lifestyle, and he was complaining to me about his girl. And I told him, do not complain to me about her. Because if you have told her from the beginning that you are every man to accommodate whatever her issues are, and all you require of her is for her to stay down. That's your requirement. You just stay down with me, right? And when you're saying I'm an individual that requires you just to stay down with me, I will take care of all of whatever that other stuff you think you bring into the table. It's nothing. That goes along with the territory. Don't put yourself out there telling a woman something, and then when a situation come about, you become a shrinking violet. That's some unmanly stuff. And you see that everywhere around the country, and particularly in our people.
And I give thanks for your answer, right? But I'm going to ask it again, right?
Okay, well, answer again.
I give thanks. The answer was great. But I wasn't even talking about relationships or black people. I was just talking about women in general. That's all I was saying. Nothing to do with relationships, nothing to do with any interaction, just a woman on the whole. That's what I was
A woman
asking.
in general, that's competitive.
In gen-
teach my
like,
daughters
yeah,
to
like
be,
just
go
the
ahead.
essence of a woman.
I teach my daughters to be not only competitive, that's not a word that I use, but excellent, right? Yeah. You are to be excellent in everything that you do. Now, if her attempts at being excellent causes her to be competitive, then that's what it is. But it's excellence. I require excellence out of her and out of my wife,
right.
out of myself. Go ahead.
So that's what I should probably should have rephrased it, understanding how you think. Do you believe within our community now, black community, black women are striving for excellence more than men?
Yeah, what has been sold to them as the idea of excellence within the confounds of this country, right? The reason why I'm saying that is because I had a young lady named Tori who just started coming to my classes, right? And she comes up out of the Nation of Islam, and we are having a conversation. And she said to me, I'm not surviving, I'm living. Yeah. I'm living. And I said, can I challenge that, Tori? Right? Can I challenge? Because you said it emphatically, you said it with passion, like that really means a lot to you. But I want to ask you, who gave you the idea of what living is? What do you mean when you say that, right? Does it mean because you are having money? What does that mean to you? And I asked her, if you were teaching somewhere, right, would your idea of living, would it apply in Mexico? Would it apply in Africa? Would it apply everywhere? Right? And so Tori thought about it for a little while, and she says, you know what? I'm talking out of my privilege, and it probably wouldn't apply to other areas. I said, well, you have to be careful with what somebody has sold you the idea of living is, because what if they take it away from you?
Facts.
What if they take away that idea that you have invested so much energy into? So when you say, are women black in our communities pursuing excellence more than black men, according to what the system said is valuable, yes.
In this culture, in this context,
Yes,
in this
in this
time. But it's not a
context.
universal concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Huh?
Cool. No. I said, no, continue. I was just saying, I see what you're saying. It's not a universal concept. That's why I said
That's
within
what
this
I'm
culture.
saying. Yeah. So within the constructs of what the country have sold the idea of success, of living, the bag, the money, capitalism, all those things.
Values on the whole, you know?
Huh?
Just values on the whole. I say just values on the whole.
Yeah, yeah, in that capacity. But again, I would challenge an individual in that because I would tell them there's an Achilles heel attached to that you're not looking at, right? Because you have bought an idea from somebody that can be challenged, and I'm challenging you. So yes, but as far as within the system, women are they're striving far more than black males.
I want to ask you, you mentioned earlier that you're Israelite, right? So you do have a spiritual foundation. You have a spiritual connection, a connection that gives you power, that gives you strength, right? Do you feel that's a missing component in a lot of our people where I know they may say they're religious, but it seems like they don't have that spiritual power that gives them that strength to continue on a certain level? I know people out here, but really kind of, give them that energy. Do you think that's a little aspect that we're missing, that spiritual connection, not religion?
Yes, this word has been passed around a lot, been passed around from white folks, from Hebrew Israelites and all this kind of stuff. So since I have the opportunity, let me explain it a little bit better, right? When I'm talking in my conferences and I'm explaining at Israelite, I'm saying that this is not religion, this is culture, right? And I often say to them, do you realize that you are thousands of years in the making? This is important. Now I say this often in my class, bring your whole mind, right? Got that from a pastor friend of mine who used to say it. I said, I'm gonna steal that from you. I said, do you realize that you are thousands of years in the making? Why is this important for me to say this to our people, right? Because our people have a disconnection because of slavery, right? And they don't feel a lineage to anything, attached to anything. But when I tell them, do you realize that you are thousands of years in the making? And that Bible is a history book about your people, our people. Then it gives you a different context, right? I said, so what Christians have considered religion, we consider culture. And this is one of the things in my entry-level explanation. I said, I have a son, Kylan. I love my son, right? I said, and my son has a friend. I said, guess what? I love my son's friend too through my son. I said, but if my son Kylan has an issue, my son comes to me knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that his daddy about to see about him. I said, but if my son's friend has an issue, he ain't got that kind of confidence. As a matter of fact, he has trepidation within him. I said, so when I'm explaining to you about culture versus religion, Christians teach you that you are a stranger to God, that you are a Gentile. So when you come before the Most High, you're coming like my son's friend would come before me. But relational, my son comes to me with confidence, knowing unequivocally that I'm going to be there for him, right? Yeah. So Christians will tell you, you got to have faith. I understand why they say it. And I'm not saying that you don't have to have faith. But what I am saying is my son doesn't have to have faith.
Because he knows.
Because faith is embedded in the relationship that we have. It's already embedded. So can you see how far and distant you will be when they're teaching you from the perspective of a stranger versus what I'm explaining to you as an Israelite, as this is your history book and your people. And when you begin to read it from that perspective, what you get from it, what you feel from it, what you understand from it, all the way different. It doesn't even have, it's all the way different, night and day. Right? So that's how I explain that, right? As far as being an Israelite. And see, what I do is I say, I am in disagreement with Hebrew Israelites on the street, cursing white folks or telling them they're going to be slaves and all that. That's beneath me. It's something I would never do. Because what it is, somebody like me that could see, it makes you look weak. You think it makes you look strong by yelling at somebody and telling somebody that. No, it's your trauma. You feel that those people are more powerful than you, and you have a reaction because you feel they're more powerful than you. Not only that, you know they've conquered you. That's why black men walk around with this bravado and this tough guy image and all this. I never do. They walk around like that because they've been conquered. And they need to show they're women. They need to show that I'm somebody. But people who run the world don't operate like that. As a matter of fact, they're very gentle people. And they're soft-spoken people. They never operate like that because they have nothing to prove. But when you have something to prove, when you feel something inside of you, you gonna walk down the street, you gonna be I'm him, and all this kind of exterior stuff, that's laughable amongst conquerors. They don't operate like that. So when I was dealing with police accountability, knowing what I'm sharing with you, do you think I operated with that bravado? Oh, it's beneath me. You think I'm going to sit here and try to convince Jewish people that I'm the original person? That's beneath me. I'm uninterested in whatever you feel about me. It doesn't matter. Right? Why? Why? Because I have taken the value that our people have had for you away. We've given you back your mind. We've given you back your ideas. We've given you back because we have found something over here within our culture because we're thousands of years in the making, baby. Woo! Woo! Boy, damn, they want to run around the block with that one.